up on that.
I want to see Henry run up the stairs.
Are we ready?
Is it? Do you want to see if that's him?
No, I think it'll be funny if he does.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, get him entering. It's time for your line.
You don't need an agent after all.
I'll hold this. He could speak.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Just say it from right there.
But take
I don't know the words.
There you go.
Where's my script? State public defender.
Why?
He's like,
I don't want to get it wrong.
Who the heck is this?
Am I in the
Right
way?
here. This is Henry.
yes,
Hello, Henry.
he's got a hell of a voice. It's the only reason we have him here. There's only one person, three people.
We are, but we usually wait till like we tempt people and say,
Yes.
not
You
till we have 5.
Tempt him in.
Not till we have 12.
We have 7. I guess
Not
it's
till we have 12.
Oh, we have 8.
Well, they're waiting for
Oh, back to 7. All right.
Oh, that.
You lost
Who's
one.
that person who sent?
That's right. I'm not going to.
All right, Hank, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
What mic are you using?
He's using mine.
Got it. Ready.
Live from Jenna's Pub in the shadow of the Wisconsin State Capitol, it's Wisci on Tap, featuring guest
Just keep saying it. You're live.
State Public Defender Kelli Thompson and your host, Steve Walters.
Good job.
He does have a great voice
Does
for
he?
that. Oh, yeah.
He's amazing.
No, great voice.
I know.
Okay, Kelly, thanks for coming. This is a pretty informal setting. But let's start.
I couldn't tell.
The public. Yeah, when we have to stop and start the intro. The Public Defender's Office. Does your office defend everybody accused of a crime who signs a paper saying they cannot afford their own private attorney?
Well, that piece of paper that people sign, actually, it's an eligibility form. So it's a pretty complicated form to see if people qualify. And if they qualify for representation, then anyone who's charged with a crime who's looking at the potential of a loss of liberty, jail or prison, then we represent.
Is that felony and misdemeanors?
Felony and misdemeanors.
And you open how many cases in a year?
It ranges somewhere between 137 and 145,000 cases a year.
And you've been public defender for how long?
Ooh, it was.
This is not a test.
It was 6 years.
6 years. And have you
years.
seen an increase in that?
No, it fluctuates. So this is not our highest year by any means this year, but it fluctuates with those numbers. But it always stays somewhere within that 10,000 range.
And you love your.
And how many state public defenders are there besides?
There are at any. We can have up to about a 360 when we're fully staffed. So that's one part of that. We also have private attorneys who we contract with who take our conflict and overflow cases.
Okay.
And they're around the state as well. So they, if they are able to and they have the appropriate training or taken certain classes, then they will sign on to take our conflict or overflow cases.
Sounds like a lot of cases, though.
Hundreds. Each public defender, staff public defenders take hundreds of cases a year.
And you love your job.
Love it.
Okay, my question is this. You're meeting with a bright law school student about to graduate next spring. What's your elevator pitch in terms of why she or he should become a public defender?
It's the most difficult, but also the most rewarding work you can do in the criminal justice system. You essentially are that first individual oftentimes, and by first individual, first person, at least with someone in our office, that is meeting someone at their most vulnerable point in their lives. They, just by definition, they're poor. They oftentimes, not always, but they oftentimes have other obstacles that they're trying to overcome. It could be mental health issues. We have a significant number of people in the criminal justice system with mental health issues. Alcohol and drug issues, educational barriers, a whole host of issues. Again, poor, so they're struggling with that economic burden as well. And they've been charged with a crime. That's scary for a lot of people. The system, they don't understand the system. The criminal justice system is very, very complicated. We see bits and pieces on the news or in shows, but it's complicated. And you're that first person with that individual. You're that person standing next to that individual who's been charged with a crime, and it's powerful. I mean, you have an impact on people's lives. I often tell our new attorneys who come to the office, we define success differently than other people. It's not a win or a loss, or we wouldn't have a lot of success necessarily, but it's working within that criminal justice system oftentimes to get someone in a treatment program, get someone in a problem-solving court, which is like a OWI court or drug treatment court, it's perhaps less jail time. And oftentimes it's going to into that jury trial and getting an acquittal, not a guilty verdict. Sometimes it's a guilty verdict and finding out, being able to tell a story. You're telling someone's story in a criminal justice system. You're telling an individual story or their life story, and it's sometimes, or oftentimes, the first time it's been told.
Well, two quick follow-up questions. That same bright law school student may have a student debt of $30,000 or $40,000.
They usually do.
So they say, okay, what's my starting pay? That's my first follow-up question. And you're dealing with the most vulnerable among us. How do you mentor a brand new law school graduate who comes into your office? So two questions.
First question is, they make about $49,000 a year to start.
Okay.
It's the same public defenders and assistant prosecutors or assistant district attorneys make the same starting salary. We can get individuals in the door. They're excited. They want to litigate. They're idealistic, and they really haven't thought about debt yet. That whole loan payment's still at least a few months out before that first payment hits the door. Our difficulty is the retention issue. It's people that we've had on staff for several years, and their pay has just gone up a tiny, tiny bit, and sometimes not at all. And they now would like to get married, and they would like to have a house, and those loan payments are needed to be paid, and that's where we struggle, and that's where we have to work really closely with the legislature, and they've been very good to us. So that is the payment issue. How those bright students, we're so lucky in our offices because we have experienced attorneys that will mentor, and that mentoring part is so important. So when we continually cycle through attorneys, that's where we see some of the struggle, because we're sending individuals out who are bright, they've gone through law school, they are ready to go, they'll work 100 hours a week, but when you don't have that experience next to you, it's a struggle. It's a struggle, and we see the impact throughout the criminal justice system then. We're really lucky in Wisconsin because we're adversaries in the courtroom, but public defenders, prosecutors, judges, we are all working together on a lot of broader issues, these coordinating councils, criminal justice councils, and that is an issue, is that experience in the courtroom.
How often do you churn them? How often do you keep someone coming right into your office? Do you keep them a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years?
It depends. It's been, prior to when I got here, so maybe it's my fault. We could keep them for decades. People, it was their career. They wanted to stay as a career. Now we have some of those people that'll make it a career because it is their passion. It is what they've always wanted to do. But it's a bigger struggle. So we'll have a few years, and then a law firm or a corp counsel or another government entity comes in and says, "We know you love it, but you have those little kids now, and they apparently like to be fed, and you might want a house," and all of a sudden we lose them. And they always say, "But I'm going to be back, Kelly. I'm going to be back." And I'm like, "Oh no, you're not." But I'm hoping.
What does that mean for the representation that someone's getting then? If it's kind of like, not to say it's like a starter job, but it sounds like in many careers it could be. What does that mean for the type of representation the clients are getting then?
And our clients get fantastic representation. That's because we can't have it a starter job. And that's why we have to work so closely with the legislature, because these are complicated cases. The criminal justice system, I mean, it has gotten more complicated. Everything from the sentencing structures to the early programming that we have, all the way through corrections into reentry programs, into probation or extended supervision. So we need experience, and the legislature recognizes that, and that's really important. The judges recognize that. You know, it's very rewarding when you have an issue, especially like a pay issue or retention issue, to be able to go to your other justice partners and say, "This is a really big issue," and then say, "Oh, it's a really big issue, we'll help you out with it," because that doesn't necessarily happen in other states. So we're really fortunate in Wisconsin.
Why does Wisconsin lead the nation in the incarceration of African Americans, Kelly?
I don't know. It's something
What could we do about it?
The conversation, it's the fact that you put it out there, and we have to have this at the local level and at the state level. So we can pass all the legislation we want at the state level. It has to start at the local level, and it has to start with the difficult conversations. And it can't start, you know, everybody looks towards, well, look at the prison population. So, you know, the makeup of the prison population. We have to start so far earlier than that. We have to start with that two teenagers who might be in trouble. Are we treating those two teenagers, one maybe in a suburb and one in the inner city, are we treating them the same way? Are we giving them the same resources? So we have to start way back. And it's a long conversation, and it's complicated. we're really lucky in Wisconsin that we have so many, when I started talking about these coordinating councils, where it's not the individual case. It's not, I'm representing Steve Walters, this is what's going on. It's talking about at a county level, all the issues that they're seeing. And so when you get the public defender, the DA, the judge, the sheriff, the local police, probation and parole, county officials there talking about these issues, you have really candid conversations. And we have to be able to have those candid conversations, and they're uncomfortable. They're very uncomfortable conversations. We have to look at issues like what happens in Milwaukee or in Dane County or wherever you may be when we maybe only have one African American on a jury. I mean, does that impact? Does it impact the fact that my clients who perhaps are a racial or ethnic minority and everybody in the courtroom is Caucasian? Does that have an impact? Does that impact how they see the criminal justice system and what happens? You know, it's not the individual situation. It's starting that conversation. It has to start at the top, but it has to go way down to the local level.
How do you keep your assistant public defenders, yeah, that's right. How do you keep them safe? We just had a shootout outside an Ohio courthouse in which a judge pulled a gun and shot one of his attackers. How do you keep them safe? Is that a factor?
It's a factor. We have had instances where things have happened. It's someone who perhaps is mentally ill, not on their medication, and does something that causes physical injury. It's again it's that local level. It's conversation, and we train constantly on training on the safety issues and looking for signs. A lot of the local court staff are doing a lot of security training, and that not just the metal detectors, but kind of, you know, make sure you're looking at what's going on. Again, make sure that we're treating people and their mental health issues, if that's it, or anger issues or whatever it may be, seriously. And having those conversations. The problem we always have with public defenders and defense attorneys, we have to be very careful we're not throwing our clients under the bus. So we are in this other, you know, we walk a fine line, and we have to be very careful of that fine line, that we're keeping ourselves safe and keeping our staff safe, but we're not doing something that's going to impact negatively that client.
If Wisconsin legalized marijuana, would you see a reduction in the caseload for your office? The impact of drug charges on your clients?
We would see a decrease. A lot of counties are the first time marijuana possessions are handling them as ordinances. We don't see those, so we do not see those. Those are civil forfeitures. The ones that were possession of a larger amount or a second possession when they're criminal, we would see a drop in those. Marijuana has, at least besides the kind of legalization conversation, it's been put to the side with the heroin and opioid and the meth. We are seeing such a huge uptick in heroin and opioids in parts of the state, and methamphetamine in other parts of the state. I mean, just numbers that are out of just really tragic and very scary. And that's where everyone's attention is. The other drugs have really been put by the wayside for now. Mm-hmm.
So what is the role of a public defender beyond representing the clients? Does the public defender's office have another role in, like, the heroin epidemic beyond just direct representation?
Absolutely. So that's where a lot of the treatment courts come in. We're working with to see if we can get our clients in the right, not just in the treatment court, but in the right treatment programs. We have so few in our office client service specialists, but they really work with our staff on trying to get our clients into the right programs. The problem with Wisconsin, and I think this is nationwide, is we have the legislature putting money in these treatment alternatives and diversion, which is fabulous, again, at the local level. The counties are committed. It's just treatment beds. It's those if you're in rural Wisconsin, it's just so much more difficult to get to that treatment and into those treatment programs, especially the type of treatment that really long-term that we need. So it's working. It's those conversations, but we're at that front end with those clients every single day. So whether they're charged in the system or it's a diversion program or trying to get them before they're charged, usually it's after they're charged, then we're representing them and trying to get them into the right programs and helping that out. Mm-hmm.
It sounds like the role of a public defender could go beyond just their attorney. Like, could it be more like a social worker role, or even beyond that?
And you have to be really careful. That was always, especially I think with new attorneys, you take on everything. Mm-hmm. 100 hours a week, you have to be very careful to find that line that you're their defense attorney. You're not their social. There are people you can certainly help out in those roles. Again, finding the treatment, getting them into the right program, but that's not your role. And that's especially for young people, because oftentimes, or young attorneys, oftentimes you're their one lifeline. You are that client, and you know everything about them, and they're struggling, and you want to be there to help them. But you still have to be careful, because you're their defense attorney. You're their advocate in court. You're representing them on their legal charges, and finding those other resources are very important.
How many drug treatment courts do we have in Wisconsin, Kelli?
I think it fluctuates over 50.
So the emergence of the emergence of these specialized courts. We have drugs, veterans, drunken driving. Is that a good trend? If so, why?
It's a good trend. It's a good trend if the courts are run based on evidence-based principles or research-based principles, meaning, I'll give you an example. So when these were first getting started, and people were looking at this, our first inclination was put the low-end offenders, the low misdemeanors in, because they'll succeed. I mean, they don't have the problems isn't real significant. These will be the ones that succeed. We found out we really probably did more harm than good, because we were over-treating them, and we were putting them in programming that they didn't need. You have to find, the person has to be the right person for a treatment program, because the treatment programs can vary, and courts can be long and intensive. So finding the correct population is very, very important. And everybody, it's the training, and we're really lucky. We've had a lot of success with in-state training and out of the state training, and that's really impactful. And it's impactful that everybody does it together if they can, but gets that training, because it's not something you can just do fly by the seat of your pants, which I think you're like, I can start a treatment program. No, there are a lot of it's again a complicated program to start. So we have, and I look at Eau Claire, it's been fantastic, really based on evidence-based principles, but they have a single mothers court, yes, working with single mothers who have special issues going on. We have mental health courts, which is in the dual diagnosis, so individuals who have mental health issues and drug treatment issues, and those are complicated. I mean, those you need healthcare experts to be in there with you. But Wisconsin's doing well with that, which is really important.
Do you have a policy of handling X number of cases per year personally?
I don't have, it depends on the type of cases. I always keep cases. I think it was someone gave me the advice, don't ever forget how to go into a courtroom and try a case, and I have kept that, and I think it's really important. If I'm doing more serious cases, homicide cases, it's harder to keep more than one or just a couple going. If it's low-end, smaller cases, then I can keep a few more clients. And I love it. That's my favorite part of it. I get the most joy out of walking into the courtroom with a client and representing them and really getting into the legal issues, because it's what, whether I thought I was going to do this when I first started in law school or not, it's what I was meant to be, or
so
meant to do.
So when were you last in the courtroom?
I was last in a courtroom. We had a homicide trial that went in May, so it was tried that case, yeah. And I have a couple of cases right now that will be going into court very soon that we're hoping to do a diversion on one, so keep my fingers crossed.
You grew up around politics with your dad as governor.
Oh, I sure did.
And that trained you for this job, and others have said potentially other jobs. So you remember you have a standard answer when people like me call up and say, hey, Attorney General Van Hollen just announced he's not going to run again. Are you going to run, Kelli? You have a standard answer. Why don't you give that standard answer?
I don't even know my standard answer.
I think you said criminal defense lawyers do not finish that. Finish that. Go ahead.
It is true. That would be quite the. I should bumper sticker going. State public defender as the attorney running for Attorney General of Wisconsin. As I said, someone asked me once if I was going to put in when they were doing the U.S. Attorney's Office. I guess I could for comic relief if people. That'd be kind of entertaining for people. But I think public defenders would make phenomenal U.S. attorneys. I think we have public defenders that go on to be elected DAs, appointed DAs, ADAs. I think they make fantastic judges because they have seen every side of every issue, and I think that's very, very important. But I know Steve did actually call me when J.B. Van Hollen.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah.
So why don't you want to run for Attorney General, Congress, U.S. Senate, Governor, the Supreme Court?
Someday, maybe. Someday, maybe.
Which one?
I don't know. I'm not. You're not going to see me in Congress. You're not going to see me in no. And you know what?
Finish that. You said no to Congress. Go ahead.
No to Congress.
And no to.
It would be hard for me to be in partisan politics. And I'll tell you, and I've grown up, and I love it. Like if you ran, I would love to work on the campaign behind. It's the front. It's changed. It's changed. It's gotten meaner. It's gotten nastier. When Dad was running all of those years, and I mean we were on every single campaign.
You did all the fairs and all that.
Every fair, every parade.
You started when you were how old?
Well, he was in the assembly before I was born, so it was
right.
birth on, and he
The
had
assembly
he'll tell you he had an opponent every single legislative race, and so we were out there every single day. I will tell you, looking back, it was a wonderful learning lesson. I met wonderful people. I learned how to talk to people. I mean, he took us everywhere. Both he and my mom.
Go?
No,
Junior
God, no.
County
Oh my
Fair,
goodness, no.
Wood County
Oh, are you
Fair.
kidding? No.
Come on, Kelly,
Let me
we're
tell you,
going to
we
the
would all
Jefferson
jump.
County
We would all jump in my mom's car because we know she'd make it shorter for us. If we were going to a fair, we'd go on the rides with my mom. She knew. Everyone jumped into her car. It was like who was the last one out the door? I'd have to go with that and actually campaign. But we all knew. We all knew. And he loved it. I mean, he's a different person when he's campaigning. He loves it. He loves it. But it's changed. It has changed. I mean, it's a press release out about everything. People are much more personally nasty towards each other, and that just wasn't. I mean, I remember. I mean, he would talk about the people he'd go out for dinner when he was in assembly. It was Wally Kinnicky, and I mean, Dave Clarenbaugh. I mean, these were people that were on politically different sides, but they could, much different. But they could sit down and discuss an issue and talk and work together.
Do you think it's ever going to come back?
I hope so. I hope so.
So you're not comfortable with being the candidate?
Not in a partisan race. I don't think so.
Should I add yet?
Yet.
Yet.
You could, yet. Yes. There we like yet.
Court.
Yeah.
That's not partisan.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. That's a subject. That's a whole new different subject. What do you consider the top achievement of your dad's 4 terms? Just one. You had to pick one.
Oh, easy for me. It's that I think he brought people together. I think it wasn't a policy issue. It was the fact that, and I know, and he'll tell you it was, he spent, I think, what was it, all of 14 years with a divided house. And I think that was a strength in the end because he had to work with people. He had to communicate with people. He had to sit down and compromise. And I think people miss that working together, and because he had to. I mean, I'm sure it was very difficult at the time, but I think that was he wanted to hear from every single person whether they liked what they were going to say or not. He wanted to talk to every person, and I would say another strength of his is, and he hates criticism. I mean, he has thin skin, that. And I mean, it's not like anybody likes criticism. But you know what? He would call people who disagreed with him, and he'd want to talk about it after he yelled. But he, I mean, he would. But he really, that was important for him. That was important for him.
He's still mad at people over the 2012 primary.
Yes.
And the presidential run, where he didn't do well in the Iowa straw poll. He's still nursing some
the
wounds.
2012, I think, was a really hard one for the family.
Yep.
That was really, really hard. That was harder than I ever anticipated it would be or expected it to be, and that was hard. And it was personally hard. That was
party labels mean anything to you? Are you a Republican?
I would say I'm a Republican. I mean, I would. Oh my gosh, where's my dad? Is he like coming? I'm a Republican. I'm a Republican. I'm a Republican. But I think, I am a Republican who has no problem supporting people who are Democrats if I believe in more in line with what they believe in. Absolutely.
Then, on November 8th, who did you vote for?
I'm not telling.
You're not?
But
okay.
But you could guess who I didn't vote for. I think I would not say I was excited about either the front candidate for different reasons. And I think they are both. President Trump was obviously a very fantastic business person. I think Secretary Clinton was. I mean, she just bright and had some fabulous attributes. I mean, and knew politics and knew government. There's no doubt. I just think those two individuals, they were polarizing, and I don't think that's what the country needed at the time.
8 months into President Trump's term, any thoughts on what type of a president or the positions he's taken? I know we're coming to the end of the show, so it doesn't have to be long.
I think I'll focus on, I would like to see a broader out of the Attorney General, and I don't know if that's coming directly from the President or if that's coming from Attorney General Sessions, but I think he's taken a stance more on, he's here in Green Bay, I know today, talking about we need prevention and awareness and treatment for opioid and heroin use, but he's also much more tough on crime, and I don't think we can arrest our way out of any of these issues. I think we've learned what we've done. We've decimated neighborhoods by trying to arrest everybody with long sentences, and I think we can do better. I think we have to do better, and I think we have to use research. I think we have to look at a healthcare model and use the criminal justice system. We have to take research, and we have to be able to go forward off of that research.
Can we deport our way out of these problems?
Deport our way?
Deport our way.
No, we cannot deport our way out of these problems. No.
Does your office see some of these cases over immigration? No?
They have immigration consequences. We do not do immigration law, so they will go, there are other immigration attorneys, but the cases that we handle have immigration consequences, and there's laws that make sure that we have to make sure our clients know what those immigration consequences are. So we're constantly working, and it's a very complicated issue for the criminal justice system.
Police officers should or should not be able to ask someone their legal status.
I don't think. I guess technically they can. They don't. Should. I think it hurts them because I think police officers, and they have such a difficult job. They need to be able to work with everyone in the community, and I think that sets up a wall that they. I mean, whether it's domestic violence or issues within the home, children. I think police officers, it puts a burden on them that they should not have to. I don't think they should have to take that burden on. I mean, that's just that's very personal. That's not our office, or especially when you're, to be a police officer and everything is like this, and you're dealing with oftentimes, issues that are going out of control, and to have to worry about the immigration status, I think is a pressure that a police officer should not have to.
And your thoughts on the growing number of guns and gun issues?
We have an issue, and we have to figure out what to do. Now, I will tell you, I think we also, at the same time as the growing issue with guns, we have to look at statistically what's going on, and we're still going down in violent crime, and I think that's important. And that message doesn't get out there, and the fact that our juvenile crime is taking a huge dive, and I think we see the carjackings in Milwaukee, and that scares people for good reason. I mean, that's a scary issue for people. But that's where we come back to research and evidence, and I think we have to look at the trends, figure out what the trends are, and we are seeing a decline. Every once in a while we have a bump up, but really overall, over the years, it's a decline.
So, biggest changes in your 6 years as public defender in terms of these criminal issues?
Biggest changes is just we've had such an uptick in some of the drugs, the heroin and the meth, and it has so many. I mean, people losing their children, the foster care, the overwhelming foster care situations as well. So that's one big issue. I think a real positive is I see Wisconsin as a leader, and in a good way, as again, that collaborative nature, and we've had more of that. We have a statewide criminal justice coordinating. We're looking more at evidence-based decision making. We're looking at research, and that's hard because we want to do everything like this, and you can't do that with that. You have to really. It takes time. It'll take years, but I think that's really important, and I think we've started the structure and the framework for that. But I think we have to be very careful. I think we are angry with people, and we're quick to try and legislate our way out of it too. Arrest and legislate, and I don't think we can arrest our way or legislate our way out of it. New crimes, new penalties, and I think because we're angry, and we have to come from a different place of perhaps research and education and work together.
And you love your job, and you're going to keep doing it.
I love my job.
Kelli Thompson, State Public Defender. Thanks for joining Wisconsin Eye on Tap.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. You want to sing anything? Nope.
No singing today?
Come on. Just a little. Thanks for tuning in.
American Idol could be watching right now.
See?
They don't exist.
All right.